Господу помолимся. Благостоянии святых Божьих церквей и соединении всех Господу помолимся. Господи, помилуй. О святем храме сем и с верою, благоговением и страхом Божиим входящих вонь, Господу помолимся. Господи, помилуй. О великом Господине и Отце нашим святейшим Патриарсе Кирилле, честнем пресвитерстве во Христе Господу помолимся. Господи,
Letter 11, Friendship. Faustum praelium. Happy battle. Distant friend and brother, the snowstorm swirls in endless circles covering the window with a fine snowy ash and beating against the window glass. A hill of frosty dust has settled on the bush in front of the window, and this snowy pyramid grows with each advancing hour. The paths are smoke. When you try to go outside, a snowy smoke bursts from beneath your feet. The air vent wheezes, wind gusts extract moans from the stovepipe. Again and again the snow-white eddies whirl about. The winter decoration has been torn from the trees, and the trees stand with bare outstretched branches, rocking back and forth. You listen to the noise in the pipe, to the wheezes of the vent. The soul becomes still in dim recollections or premonitions, and seems to dissolve in the noises. It is as if you yourself are turning into the whirling snowstorm. The window is already half covered. A twilight half-darkness has begun to reign in the room. A fluid bluish shadow lies on the room's objects. I attend to the icon lamp. The golden bundle of rays becomes brighter. I light a fragrant candle of amber yellow wax before the Mother of God. We brought this candle from there, that is, from where you and I wandered together. I throw several grains of incense into the clay censer with glowing coals and blow on them. Smoky filaments stretch out in all directions. They intertwine and are mixed in a blue, billowing cloud. Let the window be covered by the snow. It's good when that happens. The lamp inside burns more brightly. The incense is more fragrant. The flame of the fragrant candle is more even. Again, I am with you. Every day I remember something about you, and then I sit down to write. Thus, from day to day, my life slides toward the other shore, so that I could look at you at least from there. By love having defeated death, and by death having defeated the passions. Today there is constantly in my memory that frosty and snowy day when you and I were walking to the Paraclete Hermitage. We were walking through the forest. A path had already been made through the deep snow, and we kept getting stuck. Nevertheless, we got to the Hermitage. Those few days feel like an entire lifetime. Fasting, the common prayer before the large crucifix. We would rise at night. It was cold. In the darkness, we would reach the church with difficulty. Through snowbanks, descending beneath the earth, we would stumble. It was half dark in the church, as in a sepulchre. Do you remember the ancient monk, utterly bent, the one who was like Saint Seraphim? Do you remember Father Pavel, the young monk who killed himself with fasting, the one who took communion with us? Even then it was obvious that he did not have long to live. He did in fact die soon after this, from extreme abstinence. You and I took communion together. That was the seed to everything that I now have, for it is not for nothing that our Abba Isidore told us so many times, only now after his departure do I begin to understand the secret meaning of his repeated persistent words. Quote, a brother helped by a brother is as strong as a fortress. Proverbs 18:19. That is what I wish to elucidate to some extent in the present letter. The spiritual activity in which and by which knowledge of the pillar of the truth is given is love. This is love full of grace, manifested only in a purified consciousness. It can only be attained by a long, oh how long, ascesis. In order to strive to attain love, unimaginable for creatures, it is necessary to receive an initial impulse and then to be sustained in one's further motion. Such an impulse is the so common and so rationally incomprehensible a revelation of a human person, a revelation that manifests itself as love in the receiver of the revelation. Love, Heinrich Heine says, is a terrifying earthquake of the soul. Here I use the word love not in the same sense as before, in letter 4, but also in the same sense as before, because this love is not the same as that love, though it is nevertheless a foreshadowing of that love, the expected love. Love shakes up a whole person's structure, and after this earthquake of the soul, he can seek. Love opens for him the doors of the worlds on high, whence drifts the cool of paradise. Love shows him, as if in a light dream, the radiant reflection of the habitations. For an instant, love pulls off the cover of dust from creation, even if only at a single point, and reveals the divinely created beauty of creation. Love makes it possible to forget about the power of sin, takes us out of ourselves, says an authoritative stop to the torrent of our selfhood, and pushes us forward. Go and find in all of life what you have seen in bare outline, and only for an instant. Yes, only for an instant. And returning to itself, the soul longs for the lost bliss, is tormented by the sweet remembrance, as the poet said, I remember a miraculous moment when you appeared before me, like a fleeting vision, like a genius of pure beauty. Pushkin's poem to A.P. Cairn. Now a choice confronts the soul, either to submerge itself in the sin that eats away at the person, or to adorn itself with heavenly beauty. Beyond the moment of eros, in the Platonic sense of the word, philia is revealed in the soul, the highest point of earth and the bridge to heaven, constantly revealing in the person of the loved one the glimmer of primordial beauty. Philia erases, if only in a preliminary and conditional way, the bounds of selfhood's separateness, which is aloneness. In a friend, in this other eye of the loving one finds the source of hope for victory and the symbol of what is to come. And one is thus given preliminary consubstantiality and therefore preliminary knowledge of the truth. It is upon this peak of human feeling that the heavenly grace of that love descends. But in order to have a clear idea of the nuances of the concepts mentioned here, it is necessary to elucidate the content of the Greek verbs of love. Only the language of the Greeks directly expresses these nuances. The Greek language has 4 verbs that describe different aspects of the feeling of love: ieran, philein, stergein, and agapan. 1. Ieran, or erastai, in poetical language, means to direct a total feeling at an object, to surrender oneself to an object, to feel and perceive for it. This verb refers to passionate love, to jealous and even sensual desire. Consequently, eros is a general expression for love in its passion, as well as for love's desire. 2. Philein conforms most of all to the Russian lyubit in its general meaning, and is opposed to misain and ektairain. The nuance expressed by this verb of love is an inner inclination toward a person, induced by intimacy, closeness, common feeling. Therefore, philein refers to every kind of love a person who have some sort of an intimate relationship. Every kind of persons, and Philein refers to every kind of love of persons who have some sort of intimate relationship. In particular, philein, with or without the addition of doi stomati, that is, with the lips, signifies the outward expression of this intimacy to kiss. As finding its fulfillment in the very closeness of the lovers, philein includes the element of satisfaction, of self-satiety. According to the explanation of ancient lexicographers, philein means to be satisfied with something, to seek nothing more. But on the other hand, as a naturally developing feeling, philein does not have any moral, or more precisely, moralistic nuance. Philia, philotis, signifies a friendly relation, a tender expression of love, which refers to the inner disposition of the lovers. In particular, philema is a kiss. 3. Stergein signifies not a passionate love for or inclination toward a person or thing, not a beckoning to an object which determines our striving, but a calm and permanent feeling in the depths of the loving one. Owing to this feeling, the loving one recognizes the object of love as intimately connected with him, and in this recognition, the loving one acquires peace of soul. This verb of love refers to organic relation, the relation of kith and kin, a relation that not even evil can destroy, such as the tender, calm, and confident love of parents for their children, of a husband for his wife, of a citizen for his country. The derivative storgi has a meaning that conforms with stergein. 4. Agapan indicates rational love, which is based on evaluation of the loved one, and which is therefore not passionate, ardent, or tender love. About this love, we can give an account to ourselves in our rational mind, because in agapan there are fewer sensations, habits, or direct inclinations than convictions. In the common usage of the verbs of love, agapan is the weakest and is close in meaning to such verbs as to value, to respect, and the greater the place that is occupied by the rational mind, the smaller will be the place occupied by feeling. Then agapan can even mean to, quote, value rightly, not to overvalue, end quote. Since evaluation is a comparison, a choice, agapan includes the concept of a free, selective directing of the will. It would be interesting to clarify the etymon of the word examined. However, attempts at an etymology of the root agapao have unfortunately not yielded any decisive or even stable conclusions. According to Schenkel, agapao is related to agamai. I am amazed, I am enthusiastic, or perhaps to agi, amazement, astonishment, or aganos, worthy of amazement, noble, to agailo, I glorify, I decorate, to gaio, I am proud, I rejoice, to ganamai, I rejoice, excuse me, I am merry, and to the Latin gaudium and guaudere, gauder. If this is really the case, then agapan evidently means to have one's joy in something. But there are other explanations. According to Prelwitz, agapan comes from aga, or agan, that is very, and from the root pa, entering into baumai, I take, I acquire, so that agapan means to take very much, sehr nehmen, in the sense of readily and greedily. However, Prelwitz's hypothesis is refuted in the further investigations of Brugmann, Fick, and Lagerkrantz. In sum, E. Boissach, the author of the most recent etymological dictionary, declares that the etymology of agapao is obscure. The derivative agapesis signifies love in general, without sensuousness or cordiality, while agapima signifies a favorite object. The relationship between the four verbs of love is such. Agapan resembles philein in many ways, but since it refers to the rational moral side of psychic life, it does not include the idea of a spontaneous act coming directly from the heart, an act that would reveal an inner inclination. Agapan is derived of the nuances of philein, connoting to do willingly, to kiss, A kiss, after all, is a spontaneous, direct expression of feeling, to become accustomed to doing. Aristotle characterizes this difference between philein and agapon by the following comparison of the two verbs. Kai ho philos ton hedion to te gar philein hedu. Oudais gar philoinos michea kairon oinoi. Kai to phileistai hedu fantasia gar kai antauta tou uparkain atoi agaton ainai au pantes epetumosin oi akistanominoi to de philaistai agapastai estin auton di auton. That is, a friend is a pleasant thing. It is, after all, pleasant to love, thus every lover of wine enjoys it, and it is also pleasant to be loved. For here too one sees that he, the loved one, has the good that all who perceive it desire, to be loved, philaistai, is to be appreciated, agapastai, for oneself. That is, the loved one is appreciated not for some reason outside himself, but precisely for himself. Thus, philein is an inclination associated with the loved person himself and is produced by life in intimacy and by unity in many things. By contrast, agapon is an inclination associated not with the person himself, but rather with his features, with his properties, and therefore it is a somewhat impersonal, abstract inclination. Therefore, philaistai can be explained through agapastai by the addition of auton di hoiauton. Agapon has in view the properties of a person. Philon has in view the person himself. The former gives itself an account of its inclination, calculates and weighs, while for the latter the inclination is revealed spontaneously. Therefore agapon has a moral tint, while philein does not have any moral tint, for philein is spontaneous love, not free by its nature, amare, while agapon is love as the direction of will determined by the rational mind. This is free love, dilegere. In particular, this latter aspect receives emphasis in biblical usage, and agapon, pro airaistai, and diokein are therefore used synonymously by Aristotle. As for the relation between philein and eiron, they too are similar in content in many ways. However, eiron refers to the affective, sensual, and pathological side of love, while philein refers to inward attachment and intimacy. Finally, storgi does not signify a passion that erupts, eros, a personal inclination, philia, or a warm valuation of a person's qualities, agape. Rather, it signifies attachment, gentleness, and cordiality innate in a man as a member of mankind in relation to persons with whom there exists habitual, deep-rooted, superpersonal ties. Storgi is preeminently a generic feeling, a feeling directed at mankind, while the others, that is, eros, philia, and agape, apagi, probably agape, are personal. Apagi. In sum, the following features can be noted in philein. 1. Immediacy of origin, based on a personal contact, but not conditioned by organic ties alone. Naturalness. 2. Deep insight into the person himself, and not only evaluation of his qualities. 3. A quiet, cordial, non-rationalistic character of feeling, but at the same time one that is not passionate, not impulsive, not unrestrained, not blind, not turbulent. 4. Closeness, a closeness that is personal and deeply inward. Thus, the Greek language distinguishes four categories of love: the surging eros, or sensuous, passionate love; tender, organic, storge, or the love of kith and kin, attachment; the dry, rational, agape, or the love of valuation, respect; and cordial, sincere, philia, respect. Then, and cordial, sincere philia, or the love of inward acceptance, personal insight, friendliness. But in fact, none of these words expresses the love of friendship that we are considering in the present letter, a love that combines the aspects of philia, eros, and agape, a love the ancients attempted to express in some degree by the compound word philophrosuni. In any case, the most suitable word here is philein, with its derivatives. Let us therefore clarify the etymon and usage of philos as compared with synonyms of the same root. Philos derives from the pronominal root sve, in which Russian gives sva, on, which is the origin of four synonyms: 1, phytis, or etis; 2, hetairos; 3, philos; 4, idios. Consequently, philos essentially signifies someone who is one's own, close. But other derivatives of the root sphe signify own. What nuance differentiates philos from each of them? 1. The Homeric phytai are the persons one meets frequently, the persons one has much common business with. One could render phytai by the collective znat in the Voronezh dialect, that is, the circle of those whom one knows. Znat equals to know. This is the same as the Old Church Slavonic znaemye, as for example in Psalm 88:18, probably 87, "Lover and friend has thou put far from me, and mine acquaintance, znaemye, in the Old Church Slavonic, into darkness." 2. In Homer, hetairoi signifies allies, those who join in a common enterprise. Therefore, Aristarchus already explains hetairoi through synergoi, collaborators. Etis is a more ancient form of the word hetairos. Its content is not limited by a suffix. Hetairia and hetairia signify an alliance. A synonym of hetairos, the Old Russian tovar, that is tovarish, comrade, and its diminutives tovarish and tovarush, derives, according to S. Mikutsky, from the root var, to cover, to close up, and properly signifies defense, defender. The Old Russian tovar, tovari, that is camp, military encampment, signifies defense. The Magyar var, fort, fortification, also properly signifies defense. As for the particle to, it is demonstrative pronoun, which is found in the Russian to piritsia, to bristle up, the Lithuanian to lygus, see also lygus, equal, even the Polish tojad, the Russian iad, poison, a poisonous plant, the Czech roztomili, very dear. This to is probably identical with the demonstrative article used in Bulgarian, and even now can be found in certain northern dialects of Russian, especially in the Kostroma dialect. 3. Philos is a friend, one with whom we are connected by mutual love. Philia is friendship. The relation between philos and hetairos is as follows. One is always well disposed toward philos, for in the absence of this well disposedness, philos stops being philos for us. By contrast, hetairo are friends of occasion, who are our friends only because we are pursuing with them some common goal. Thus, if philos and hetairos are compared, the former signifies a person with whom we are intimately linked by love, while the latter signifies only a comrade, tovarish. Sometimes hetairos even signifies only a political ally, a member of the same party. Hetairoi are linked by a temporary, external, accidental connection, whereas philoi are linked by an indissoluble, or what should be an indissoluble, internally necessary, spiritual connection. In this sense, the following equation is correct. Philos equals pistos hetairos. A friend is a faithful comrade, faithful unto the end and in all. Therefore, pairastai, philon, to put friends to the test, is a sign of mistrust and deficiency of friendship. The ancient grammarians already spoke of this distinction between heteros and philos. Thus, according to Ammonius, heteros and philos are different. Philos is also heteros, but heteros is not completely philos. Therefore, Homer says of the wind, Odyssey 11:7, inflating the sails of a true comrade. And on the other hand, one usually calls philoi all those who mutually observe the obligations of friendship, whereas heteroi are in general those who live and work together. An sunitei kai and synergiai. Finally, the word idios signifies one's own, in opposition to that which we have in common with many, that is, koinos, daimosios, and so forth. Idios signifies peculiarity, that is, a person or thing in opposition to others having their own nature. Such is the natural human meaning of the verbs of love and their derivatives. But the Holy Scripture, having adopted some of these verbs, gave them a new content, filled them with spirit, and saturated them with the idea of divine love full of grace. In Scripture, the internal energy of the Word has become inversely proportional to the human energy that was connected with the Word in the classical language. The words Iran and Eros are virtually absent from the books of the Old Testament and the Septuagint, and they are completely excluded from the books of the New Testament. One should note, however, that the terms Eros and Iran have found a place in ascetic writings. Such mystical fathers as Gregory of Nyssa, Nicholas Cavasilas, Simeon the New Theologian, and the rest all use these terms to designate the higher love for God. In particular, Simeon the New Theologian has a long work about the love for God, which is even entitled Erotis, that is, Erosis. In the Holy Scripture, philein was filled with spirit and came to express Christian relations of love based on personal inclination and personal communion. Finally, the formerly colorless and dry agapan was filled with spiritual life, and in the newly formed expressly biblical agape, it began to express profound universal love, the love of higher spiritual freedom. In some cases, philein and agapan are almost interchangeable. In other cases, they are differentiated. Thus, when it is a question of the commandment of love for God and for one's neighbors, the word agapan is always used. However, concerning love for enemies, only agapan is used, never philein. On the contrary, philein and agapan are alternately used to denote the Lord's intimately personal love for Lazarus, John 11:3, 5, and 36, and his relationship with his beloved disciple, John 20:21, see also 13:23, 19:26, and 21:7. The New Testament usage of agapan can be summarized in the following way. Agapan occurs in all cases where it is a question of direction of will, Matthew 5:43, 44, 1:9, etc., as well as where inclination rests on a decision of the will on the choice of the object of love. Hebrews 1:9, 2 Corinthians 9:7, 1 Peter 3:15, John 13:19, John 12:43, and 21:15 through 17, and Luke 6:32. In order to understand anything of the Lord's conversation with Peter, John 21:15 through 17, so decisive for justifying the claims of the Catholics, we must take account of the different meanings of the two verbs of love. By his twice-uttered question, the resurrected Christ indicates to Peter that he violated friendly love, philia, for the Lord, and that henceforth one can demand of him only universal human love, only that love which every disciple of Christ necessarily offers to every person, even to his enemy. It is in this sense that the Lord asks, agapai me. The meaning of the question is clear, but in order to express it in our language, one would need to expand the text, perhaps in this way. Once you were accounted my friend, but now after your renunciation of me, it does not pay even to speak of friendly love. But there is another love which must be offered to all people. Do you have at least that love for me? But Peter does not even want to hear such a question, and keeps speaking of the authenticity of his personal friendly love. Philose, I am your friend. That is why he was grieved when, despite this twice uttered insistence on his philia for the Lord agreed to speak of this kind of love only in the third question, which was probably posed in a tone of reproach and mistrust. Phileis me, are you my friend? At first, the Lord did not speak of friendship at all, and Peter received his question calmly. Peter was so certain of his universal love for the Lord and so confident there could be no question concerning this love as far as he was concerned that he did not even consider it necessary to answer the hidden, immeasurably delicate reproach in these words, the figure of silence. Perhaps he even did not understand or did not want to understand the Lord in this sense, so it was twice. Then the Lord disclosed his hidden thought and spoke directly of the love of friends. That is what grieved the apostle. He was grieved because the third time Jesus said to him, "Are you my friend?" John 21:17. The ear hears tears in this halting answer. Lord, you know everything. You know that I am your friend. Su gignokeis hoti philo se. John 21:17b. Keeping in mind the fact that the words agapon and philein are not identical, one can scarcely understand this conversation as a restoration of Peter's apostolic dignity. It is difficult to admit such a meaning, if only because Peter did not behave worse, even if not better, with regard to his teacher than the other apostles. Thus, if Peter lost his apostleship, the other apostles are no different in this respect. Furthermore, nowhere is it seen that he was excommunicated from the 12 as an apostate. On the contrary, he does not ascribe any extraordinary guilt to himself, nor do the others. But what Peter really needed was the restoration of friendly, personal relations with the Lord. For Peter did not reject Jesus as the Son of God, did not say that he was renouncing faith in him as the Messiah, that was not even demanded of him. Rather, he had injured the Lord as a friend injures a friend, and therefore he needed a new covenant of friendship. In other words, the passage analyzed here does not at all concern events of ecclesiastical economy, whether they are understood as the restoration of Peter and the apostleship or as the bestowing upon him of extraordinary powers. It exclusively concerns this apostle's personal fate and life. This passage is edifying, but it is not dogmatic, and Roman Catholics therefore underscore it in vain. The foregoing discussion explains why the evangelist considers it possible to place the 21st chapter outside the frame of the exposition. It is clear that he did not see in it something indisputably important, but that could not be the case in its Roman Catholic interpretation. And all the other usages of agapon in the New Testament. B. Agapon is used where there is selection and, as negative selection, the not taking into account, elegere, and negligere. Matthew 6:24, Luke 16:13, Romans 9:13. Thus, ho uios mou agapitos. Ho uios mou agapitos. Luke 9:35, see Matthew 12:18. Has its parallel in Isaiah 42:1. This passage is rendered as ho eklektos mou in the Septuagint. See, agapon is also used where it is a question of free, not organic, pity. Luke 7:5, 1 Thessalonians 1:4, etc. Finally, agapon refers to the historically revealed relation between Christians. As for agape, it is a word that, as we have said, is wholly alien to the extra-biblical ancient secular language. It signifies a love that, through a decision of the will, selects for itself its object, dilectio, thus becoming a self-negating and passive self-surrender for and for the sake of the object. Such sacrificial love on a secular basis is known only as a fleeting feeling, an inspiration from another world, not as a determination of life activity. The biblical agape therefore has features that are not human and conditional, but divine and absolute. This quartet of words of love is one of the greatest jewels in the treasury of the Greek language, and it is hardly possible to survey with a single glance all the advantages offered to the understanding of life by this perfect instrument. Other languages cannot flatter themselves with anything even remotely similar in the domain of the idea of love. This results in endless and useless talks and frictions, as well as the need to invent at least a surrogate of the Greek quartet, which is done by using several words to create a term equivalent to a single Greek word. Such complex terms are offered by Arnold Goelinks in his Ethics, which appeared in 1665. He posits the following four types of love: amor affectionis, love of feeling; amor benevolentiae, love of benevolence; amor concupiscentiae, love of attraction; amor obedientiae, love of respect. In comparison with the Greek words, the relationship would be roughly such: amor affectionis, philia; amor benevolentiae, agape; amor concupiscentiae, eros; amor obedientiae, storge. Goelinks also recognizes the formal possibility of a fifth type of love, which he calls amor spiritualis, and which he defines as a bodiless being's passive love, a pure spirit's love passion. But he does not recognize this abstract love as something wholly real, which is probably why he does not introduce it into the final classification of the types of love. As for us, we are ready to admit that perhaps there is a special life that is characteristic of a bodiless, astral, quote-unquote, but not thereby spiritual, organization, and that it may find its realization in phenomena of mediumistic ecstasy among spiritists, Calists, certain mystics, and so on. But this state has been investigated little, and we do not need it for our purposes. I will permit myself to refrain from a special examination of this state here. Let us present a scheme that summarizes Goelinks' views of love. Let us note that some slight contradictions in the following table result from the fact that there are two versions of the Ethics. The text of the Ethics was written in 1665, whereas the notes were written in 1675. 1. Amor delectionis, love of feeling. Est coevis humana mente suavitas. It is every sweetness in the human soul. It is not a virtue itself, but a certain accidental reward for virtue, which just as often accompanies virtue as abandons it. 2. Amor affectionis, love of action. Est quod vis firmum propositum, is every firm intention. It is not only the firm intention of carrying out what reason considers necessary, but in general it signifies any firm intention of carrying out anything, even injustice or revenge. It equals amor respectu finis cui, love directed toward a goal. It is often provoked by amor affectionis, but this concerns intemperance, intemperantia. Neither of these forms of love constitutes a virtue. Virtue can exist both with and without the first, although without the second there can be no virtue. The latter is nonetheless primary with respect to amor affectionis. One A. Amor sensibilis soi siu corporalis, qui est amor passio, aut amor affectionis, sensuous or corporeal love, which is love passion or love of attraction. Since the human soul is connected with the body, this love passion is the total, single, and unique delight of the soul. Its various names are laetia, deliciae, jucunditas, hilaritas, gaudium, jubilum. It is that which is delightful in desiderium, in space, in fiducia. It is love passion. It is neither bad nor good, but rather an indifferent thing, res indifferens. Adiaphora. It is sometimes produced by the love of actions, amor affectionis. This frequently happens when one practices virtue. One B. Amor spiritualis, abstract love. Qui est approbatio quaedam, which consists of a kind of approval. In the forefront here is that approval with which we approve our own actions, owing to the fact that they conform to reason or the supreme rule, suprema regula, But this abstract love, amor spiritualis, is considered almost nothing. Pro nihilo fere ducitur, for men are addicted to their own sensuousness. Addicti sunt suis sensibus. To a amor obedientiae, love of respect. This love constitutes virtue, quote unquote. What is virtue? Virtus est propositum, faciendi quod iubet ratio. Virtue is the intention of doing that which reason commands. Therefore, virtuous love is amor quidam qui nempe firmum propositum faciendi quod recta ratio faciendum esse decreverit. A love that has expressed the firm intention of doing that which the just reason considers obligatory. To be amor benevolentiae, aut beneficentiae, love of benevolence or beneficence. In general, it has no relation to virtue. In relation to God, it cannot fail to be shameful and criminal. For if we experience it, we place ourselves above God and desire to be more worthy than He. To see amor concupiscentiae, love of desire, it has even less relation to virtue. A religious society is connected and held together by a double bond. The first part of this bond is personal connection, which goes from person to person. It is based on the feeling of the members of the society that other members, as autonomous units, as monads, have a supra-empirical reality. The second part is the mutual perception of members in the light of the idea of the whole society. In this case, the object of love is not a single person taken by himself, but all of society projected on a person. For ancient society, these two bonds were eros as the personal force and storge as the principle of kith and kin. The first of these two principles served as the metaphysical foundation of social being. On the other hand, the natural soil for a Christian society as such became philia in the personal domain and agape in the social domain. Both forces are spiritualized and transformed, are saturated with grace, so that even marriage, the preeminent repository of storge, and ancient friendship, the preeminent repository of eros, were painted in Christianity in the hues of spiritualized agape and philia. If one reads consecutively three dialogues with the same title, the Symposium of Xenophon, that of Plato, and that of St. Methody of Olympus, this ennoblement and spiritualization of the concepts of love stand out with startling plasticity. And this comparison is made the more graphic by the fact that all three dialogues are written according to the same literary scheme, and each succeeding dialogue is a conscious ascent over the preceding one. These three dialogues can be likened to stories of a single house built at different heights, but having similar arrangements of rooms. Xenophon examines animal life, Plato examines human life, St. Methody examines angelic life. Thus, preserving the type of organization that is proper to his nature, man ascends higher and higher to the prize of high calling, and spiritualizes all the life activity of his being. The agapic aspect of a Christian society finds its embodiment in the early Christian ecclesia, in a parish, in a monastic synobi, koinobia, communal living. Feasts of love or agapes, culminating in a clearly mystical, even mysterial, co-partaking of the sacred body and precious blood, are the highest expression of this agapic aspect. This blossom of ecclesial life contains the source that nourishes all other life activity of the ecclesia, from the everyday torment of the mutual bearing of burdens to bloody martyrdom. Such then is the agapic side of life. By contrast, the philic side is embodied in relations of friendship. These relations blossom in sacramental adelphopoiesis and the co-partaking of the Holy Eucharist, and are nourished by this partaking for co-ascesis, co-patience, and co-martyrdom. The agapic and philic aspects of church life, brotherhood and friendship, run parallel to each other in many ways. One could indicate a number of forms and schemes that appertain equally to both domains. On the basis of a possible, if unlikely, etymology, one could say that a brother, brat in Russian, is a taker, bratil, of the burden of life upon himself, one who takes, beret, upon himself the cross of another. Whatever the origin of the word, a brother is, in essence, one who takes a burden upon himself. But this is precisely what a friend does too. On the other hand, if a friend, drug in Russian, is another drugoi, is another I, can one not say the same thing about a brother? At points of their highest significance, at their peaks, the two currents, brotherhood and friendship, strive to merge fully. This is easy to understand, for the communion with Christ through the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist is the source of all spirituality. Nevertheless, these two currents are irreducible to each other, each necessary in its own way in the church economy, just as in connection with which personal creativity and the continuity of tradition are both necessary, each in its own way. The combination of these currents yields a dual unity, but not a mixing, not an identification. For a Christian, every man is a neighbor, but far from every man is a friend. An enemy, even a hater and a slanderer, is a neighbor, but even a loving person is not always a friend, for the relations of friendship are profoundly individual and exclusive. Thus, even the Lord Jesus Christ calls the apostles his friends, quote-unquote, only before parting from them, only on the threshold of his agony, on the cross and death. See John 15:15. The presence of brothers, however loved they may be, does not therefore remove the necessity of a friend, and vice versa. On the contrary, the need for a friend becomes even more acute from the presence of brothers, while the presence of a friend includes the necessity of brothers. Only if they are insufficiently strong can agape and philia appear to be almost the same thing, just as only an impure marriage resembles impure virginity, whereas in its limit marriage forms an antinomically coupled pair with the limit of virginity. But the more glorious and beautiful is the opened flower of the soul. The clearer and more certain will be the antinomic character of the two sides of love, their dual conjugacy. In order to live among brothers, it is necessary to have a friend, if only a distant one. In order to have a friend, it is necessary to live among brothers, at least to be with them in spirit. In fact, in order to treat everyone as oneself, it is necessary to see oneself at least in one person, to feel oneself in him. It is necessary to perceive in this one person an already achieved, even if only partial, victory over selfhood. Only a friend, capital F, is such a one agapic love for whom is a consequence of philic love for him. But for philic love of a friend not to degenerate into a peculiar self-love, for a friend not to become merely the condition of a comfortable life, for friendship to have a depth, what is necessary is an outward manifestation and disclosure of the forces that are given by friendship. What is necessary is agapic love for brothers. In the overall church economy, where persons are 3 measures of meal, see Matthew 13:33, and the church is a woman, quote-unquote, philia is a leaven, while agape is the salt that keeps human relations from spoiling. Without the former, there is no ferment, no creativity of church humanity, no movement forward, no pathos of life, whereas without the latter, there is no incorruptibility, collectedness, purity, or wholeness of this life. There is no conservation of orders and rules, no harmony of life. In its foreshadowings of future Christianity, antiquity pushed to the fore both sides of church life. There is, of course, no need to give examples. It is more useful to sketch with 2 or 3 strokes now how later thought viewed friendship. I mention friendship because how later thought viewed brotherhood is sufficiently known and does not need to be discussed. The mystical unity that is revealed in the consciousness of friends permeates all the aspects of their life, makes even the everyday golden. It follows that, even in the domain of simple collaboration, simple camaraderie, a friend acquires a value greater than his empirical value. Assistance to a friend acquires a mysterious hue that is dear to the heart. Profit from this assistance becomes sacred. The growth of what is empirical in friendship transcends itself. stretches toward the heavens, while its roots plunge into the sub-empirical depths of the earth. Perhaps, rather not perhaps, but of course, herein lies the reason for the insistence with which both the ancients and the moderns, Christians, Jews, and pagans, praised friendship in its utilitarian, pedagogic, and everyday aspects. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. This is with regard to mutual aid in life. But friends also educate each other by mutual friction and adaptation. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Proverbs 27:17. The very closeness of a friend is joyous. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Proverbs 27:9. A friend is a support and protection in life. A faithful friend is a sure shelter. Whoever finds one has found a rare treasure. A faithful friend is something beyond price. There is no measuring his worth. A faithful friend is the elixir of life, and those who fear the Lord will find one. Whoever fears the Lord directs his friendship in such a way that as he himself is, so his friend becomes. Ecclesiasticus 6:14 through 17. Jerusalem Bible translation modified to fit the Russian. A spiritual value is clearly placed on friendship in these practical utilitarian considerations on the profit and pleasure of friendship, and this spiritual valuation becomes even clearer and more distinct if we remember the obligations connected with a friend. A true friend is recognized only in misfortune. A friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Proverbs 17:17. One should be faithful to a friend. Thine own friend forsake not. Proverbs 27:10. Says the wise one, while the son of Sirach expresses the same thought more fully. Do not desert an old friend. The new one will not be his match. New friend, new wine. When it grows old, you drink it with pleasure. Ecclesiasticus 9:10, 14 through 15. Assistance to a friend is a worthy offering to the Lord. 14:11. Also be kind to your friend before you die. Treat him as generously as you can afford. Do not refuse yourself the good things of today. Do not let your share of what is lawfully desired pass you by. Ecclesiasticus 14:13. Also do not forget your friend in your soul, and do not forget him in your wealth. 37:6. Friends are linked in an intimate unity. There is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Proverbs 18:24. Therefore, a friendship cannot be destroyed by anything except by a blow directed against the very unity of the friends, by what strikes at the heart of the friend as a friend, by betrayal, mockery of the friendship itself, of its holiness. The man who pricks the eye makes tears fall, and the man who pricks the heart makes it show morbid feeling. The man who throws a stone at the bird scares them away, and the man who abuses a friend destroys a friendship. Even if you draw the sword against your friend, do not despair, for there is a way to regain your friend. If you open your mouth against your friend, do not be afraid, for there is such a thing as reconciliation. Only abuse and arrogance and a secret and treacherous blow can cause your friend to take flight. Ecclesiasticus 22. The man who tells secrets destroys confidence and will not find a friend to his soul. If you love your friend, keep faith with him, but if you tell his secrets, do not pursue him. For sure as a man loses his dead, you have lost your neighbor's friendship, and as you let a bird out of your hand, you have let your neighbor out, and you will never catch him. Do not go after him, for he is far away, and has made his escape like a gazelle from a trap. For you can bind up a wound and be reconciled after abuse, but for the man who tells secrets, there is no hope for reconciliation. Ecclesiastes 27. Finally, higher trust and higher forgiveness must belong to a friend. Having heard that your friend has done something, question him. Perhaps he did not do it, or if he did, let him not do it again. Question your friend. Perhaps he did not say it, or if he did, let him not say it again. Question a friend, for often there is slander. and you must not believe everything that is said. Ecclesiastes 19. The greatest trust that can be bestowed upon a man is to believe in him despite condemnations of him, despite evident facts that testify against them, despite all that speaks against him. The greatest trust that can be bestowed upon a man is to accept only the judgment of his conscience, his words. The greatest forgiveness consists in acting as if nothing had happened, in forgetting what had happened. Such a trust and such a forgiveness must be offered to a friend. That is why a friend is the being who is closest to one's heart. That is why the Bible, wishing to indicate the inner closeness of Moses to God, calls him the friend of God. Exodus 33:11, James 2:23. The Bible also shows the realization of this ideal of friendship in living reality. I have in mind the extremely touching friendship of David and Jonathan, depicted in just a few words, but for that reason almost painfully touching, written as if for me, everyone thinks. The soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. 1 Samuel 18:1. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul, and Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle. Then Jonathan said unto David, Whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. Thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee. Notwithstanding, if there be in me iniquity, slay me thyself. Jonathan loved him as he loved his own soul. David fell on his face to the ground and bowed himself 3 times, and they kissed one another and wept with one another, until David exceeded, that is, wept more. The tremendous moans of the 88th Psalm break off with a wail for a friend. Words can be found for all other sorrows, but the loss of a friend and dear one is beyond words. It is the limit to sorrow, a kind of moral vertigo. Loneliness is a terrible word. To be without a friend has a mysterious relation to be without God. The deprivation of a friend is a kind of death. O Lord God of my salvation, I have cried day and night before thee, for my soul is full of troubles, and my life draweth nigh unto the grave. I am counted with them that go down into the pit. I am as a man that hath no strength, free among the dead, like the bodies of the slain that lie in the grave, whom thou rememberest no more, and they are cut off from thy hand. Thou hast laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness, in the depths. Mine eye mourneth by reason of affliction. Lord, I have called daily unto thee. I have stretched out my hands unto thee. I am afflicted and ready to die from my youth up. While I suffer thy terrors, I am distracted. Thy fierce wrath goeth over me. Thy terrors have cut me off. They came round about me daily like water. They compassed me about together. Lover and friend hast thou put far from me, and mine acquaintance into darkness. In his Psalms, the prophet king builds a bridge from the Old to the New Testament. Thus, his friendship with Jonathan also rises above the level of the utilitarian friendship of the Old Testament and anticipates the tragic friendship of the New. The shadow of deep, inexorable tragedy lay upon this ancestor of Christ. Owing to this shadow, honorable earthly friendship became infinitely deepened and infinitely sweet for our heart, which has the gospel. We have come to love tragedy. The sweet arrow of Christianity makes our heart ache, as Veve Rozanov says. A protean giant of the Russian Silver Age, Vasily Rozanov, 1856 to 1919, was a powerful philosopher of generation and sex. Before D.H. Lawrence, a rebel who came out against the monastic Byzantine interpretation of the Gospels, and then even against Christianity itself in the name of living life, a favorable concept of Dostoevsky's, but he always felt cozy within the Russian Orthodox Church and never stopped thinking of it as his home. Rozanov became especially close to the Church in the early part of the second decade of the century, a period when Florensky became one of his dearest friends. Rozanov boldly and insistently exposed the hypocritical nature of the liberalism of much of the Russian intelligentsia. He liked to show himself off as an immoralist, violating generally accepted ethical norms and shocking the reader with the nakedness of his inner world. He was a destroyer of traditional literary forms, a completer and culminator of the old literature. metaphysician and mystic, Rozanov was interested, first and foremost, in the imperceptible, the unheralded, the undocumented. His rapt attentiveness to the unclear and unfocused world allowed him to discover a new way of viewing ordinary things, to acquire a strikingly unusual vision of life and the history of civilization. Footnote. The agape philia antinomy was first remarked in books of the Old Testament. Perhaps this antinomy was also dimly foreseen by the Greek Christians before Christ. But it was first fully disclosed in that book in which the antinomy of spiritual life was revealed with insane clarity and salvific acuteness, the Gospel. Equal love for all and each in their unity, concentrated in a single focus of love for several, even for one in his separation from the general unity, disclosure before all, openness with everyone, together with esotericism, the mystery of the few, the greatest democratism together with the strictest aristocratism. Absolutely all are the elect, together with the elect of the elect. Preach the gospel to every creature. Mark 16:15, Colossians 1:23. Together with neither cast ye your pearls before swine. Matthew 7:6. In brief, agape philia, such are the antinomic dualities of the good news. The power of the gospel is accessible to all, does not need an interpreter. But this power is also thoroughly esoteric. Not one word of the gospel can be understood correctly without the tradition of the elders, without the interpretation of spiritual guides, successfully handing down the meaning of the gospel from generation to generation. The book, clear as crystal, is at the same time the book with 7 seals. All are equal in a Christian community, and at the same time, the whole structure of the community is hierarchical. Around Christ there are several concentric layers of increasingly greater and more profound knowledge as he is approached. On the outside are external crowds of people, then the secret disciples and adherents, such as Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, Lazarus and his sisters, the women who followed the Lord, and so forth. Then the chosen, the 70, then the 12, then the 3, Peter, James, and John, and finally one whom Jesus loved. Such is the characteristic structure of the sacred community of Christ's disciples. We could also mention sermon by parables, the limiting of the circle of witnesses to one concentric layer or another, the explanation of a parable in private. And his disciples asked him, saying, What might this parable be? And he said, Unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but to others in parables, that, let the reader understand, seeing they might not see, and hearing they might not understand. Luke 8. Nevertheless, if this and much else indisputably proves the esoteric character of Christianity, not a smaller quantity of well-known data proves its complexity or its complete exoteric character. Exotericism and esotericism are not rationally compatible. They are reconcilable only in the most profoundly mysterious Christian life, not in rationalistic formulas and rational schemes. The friendly, philic structure of the brotherly, agapic community of Christians characterizes not only the hierarchic and philarchic relation of its co-members to the center, but also the smallest fragments of the community. Like a crystal, a Christian community is not fragmented into amorphous, non-crystallized homoeomeric homoeomeric parts. The limit to fragmentation is not the human atom that from itself relates to the community, but a community molecule, a pair of friends, which is the principle of actions here, just as the family was this kind of molecule for the pagan community. This is a new antinomy, the person-dyad antinomy. On the one hand, the separate person is everything. On the other hand, he is something only where there are 2 or 3. 2 or 3 is something qualitatively higher than 1, although it is precisely Christianity that has created the idea of the absolute value of the separate person. The person can be absolutely valuable in only an absolutely valuable communion, although one cannot say that the person is prior to communion or that communion is prior to the person. The primordial person and primordial communion, which rationally are seen as excluding each other, are given as a fact in church life. They are given together and at the same time. And if in the emergence of the one or the other we cannot conceive their ontological equivalence, we are less capable, even less capable of conceiving them as ontologically unequivalent in actualized reality. The spiritual life of a person is inseparable from his preliminary communion with others, but the communion is incomprehensible without an already present spiritual life. This connectedness of communion and spiritual life is expressively indicated in the Holy Book. Having called 12 disciples, the Lord sends them to preach by 2 and 2. And this sending forth by 2 and 2 is connected with the giving of power over unclean spirits, that is, with the charisma, above all, of chastity and virginity. And he calls unto him the 12, and began to send them forth by 2 and 2, and gave them power over unclean spirits. The sending of the 70 signified the same thing. Having chosen 70, the Lord also sent them 2 and 2. Luke 10:1. Here he gave them the gift of healing. Luke 10:9. And the power over devils. Luke 10:17, 19, and 20. These texts of Mark and Luke also contain an implied hint at knowledge of the mysteries of the kingdom, even if only a partial knowledge. For here the disciples are being sent to preach, and preaching presupposes such knowledge. It is also not by chance. One must suppose that John the Baptist sends 2 of his disciples to Christ when it is necessary to look spiritually into the person of Jesus and to determine if he is Christ. Matthew 11:2. But it is necessary to point out that the passage he sent 2 of his disciples and said unto him, Pimsas duoton matiton auto aipen autoi, is corrected by another interpretation of the text to read diaton matiton auto, that is, he let it be known to him through his disciples. But this correction, even if it has textual justification, does not change the meaning, for the number 2 is confirmed by Luke 7:19, and John calling unto him 2 of his disciples sent them to Jesus, saying, Kai pros kalesemenos duo dinas ton matiton autu ho ionis epimpsen pros tau korion legon. Thus the knowing of mysteries, that is the inward directed bearing of spirit, like the doing of miracles, that is the outward directed bearing of spirit, or more briefly the bearing of spirit in general, is based on the abiding of the disciples 2 by 2. 2 is not 1 plus 1, but something essentially greater, something essentially more manifoldly significant and powerful.